Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Namaste Center, and happy late Valentine's to everybody. Hope everyone got to just snuggle up to their loved one or experience the love of the day and the energy of the day. And of course, it's all about love, not just on Valentine's Day, but every day of the year. And Valentine's Day this year, we were flying across the pond back to the US of A from a big trip to Ireland that we got to experience and enjoy last week. And it was wonderful. And I thought I'd share a few highlights from the trip and some ahas and some experiences that we had, and it was wonderful. You know, when we booked this trip back in December, I said, I'm not one of these. First of all, you can ask Ellen. I like to drive and I like to travel in the RV, and that's about it. Flying, nope. As far as taking a big trip, I haven't been interested, but for some reason, there was something that came up on the email that said Travel Zoo, $699 round trip, 5 stars, included airfare and 5-star resort lodging. And I was like, and a rental car. I was like, well, that's wild. So I said, Ellen, let's do this. And she said, yeah, not in February. That's why it's so cheap. And I said, oh, come on, let's do it. I mean, you know, it's let's just go for it, make it an adventure. But you needed to have 4 people because you shared a villa and shared the car in this package. So who should we invite? And our friend Candace has been always wanting to go on a vacation with us, and so we called Candace and her sister, and they both came to the house the next day, and sure enough, we signed up right then and there, and we were committed. Well, as time goes on, it didn't turn out to be Candace's sister because she had brain surgery, and the good news is she's doing beautifully, wonderfully. She's back home, and it all went well. But we did find a great replacement, an English woman. That Jerry reminded me today. I said British. He says, no, it's all Britain. She's English. So anyway, we had a wonderful English woman who joined us on the trip, who was a friend of Candace's and Kathy's. And, you know, she was so cute. We went looking for fairies. Well, this woman was the fairy. She was about this tall. She had little spiky red hair, and she was the kindest, sweetest person you could ever imagine. And we really had a great time with her. But interestingly enough, I think I've shared with you guys in the past, I'm not really a person drawn to readings. I think that I can take them or leave them. Sometimes I find they're interesting and I'll do it, but it's not something I'm always on a mission to do. But several months ago, someone said, you must contact this woman. She's great. And she's in Florida, and it turns out she's a fellow Alliance of Divine Love minister. And I'll be darned, this woman pegged me and what was going on in my life in the first 2 minutes of the conversation. This was 6 months ago. I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And so I was, you know, and it really did help me through. So when someone is so gifted, it can be helpful, at least by my experience. Well, I, of course, spread the good word. This woman's fantastic. You must see her. And she called me up in December and she said, Charlotte, you've given me so much business that I'd love to give you a free reading. I said, okay, I'll accept it. So there again, first 2 minutes of the conversation, she says, you're in February, you're going to go meet your ancestors. And I was like, oh my gosh. I said, I'm going to Ireland in February. And I'm Irish. So she picked right up on that, and she had a few other interesting things to share with me, which was really cool. So, you know, this trip, I was leading up with great anticipation and excitement, and I just knew it was going to be an adventure, but I had no idea how much of an adventure it was going to be. And Ellen was right. There is a reason why it was $699. And she wasn't the only one. They said, February, Ireland? But, you know, we went prepared. We took our long underwear. We took our rain gear. And we just went for it. But if you all have been keeping up with the weather, in England, flooding everywhere. And so, I mean, you know, this is flooding they haven't seen in centuries. I mean, villages are underwater, and of course then Shelley, our friend Shelley, sends us a a post, and she said, "Send prayers to Charlotte and Ellen because this mammoth storm is coming towards Ireland." And so I looked at this. I was like, "Oh my gosh!" Well, we get there, and the weather was, needless to say, very interesting. But somehow the miracle and the beauty of it was that we dodged the really bad stuff. Wow. It was all around us, but every activity, the way we laid everything out, it seemed like we were at the right place at the right time. The only thing we didn't get to do was kiss the Blarney Stone because that was underwater. And that part of Ireland was underwater. So, and then I come to find out, who was it that told me? That they, I believe it was Thomas yesterday, he said, "Yeah, you know, when you kiss the Blarney Stone, there's a drop off underneath it and they have to hold you." And I'm like, well, thank God I wouldn't have done it anyway, 80 feet, no, you know, so anyway, I think I got the gift of gab enough already. So it's, but we, so we got there and we did the tourist things, and we went to Bunratty Castle, which is like a, you know, Disneyland for the castles. They've got the castle tours, and they've got all the old village reenactments and everything there, and it was really awesome and great to be in that castle energy. And these castles are just fascinating. I mean, you know, 1,000, 2,000 years old, and they're still solid. And you know, the interesting thing is how the locals, you know, many of these people that lived in each of these little villages often have not even been outside of their village their entire life. So these clans are still there and still very connected and very interested. Well, the first night after we went to Bunratty and that tour, we got of course, I was just wanting to go to a pub. I just thought that's going to be really fun. And the first night we went to Dirty Nellie's, and I had my first Guinness, which number one, beer's not my thing as a rule. And everyone said, "Oh, Guinness," and I'm like, "Ugh, I sipped that once, it's terrible." Not there. It was, I mean, and by the pictures and everyone I posted on Facebook, they must have thought I was on a drunken, mission here, because every picture I've got a Guinness. But they were so creamy and delicious, and we ended up the first night, truly, we only had one with each meal each day, but it just comes out that when you see that many pictures every meal, you know, whatever. But it was really just so much fun, and the waitresses, everything you could dream of. I mean, the dark walls and the wood and just the old furniture and, you know, just the festivities of it and the locals. It was just a blast. So the weather that day actually wasn't that bad. We dodged a few raindrops, but the next day we go to the Cliffs of Moher, and one of the most outstanding places I think I've ever been in my life. And of course, you got to walk up this trail, and it was brutally cold. The wind must have been 80 miles an hour. And so we bought these stupid looking hats that covered the ears, and you know, I looked like the Michelin tire person with that in layers, and I'm walking up this hill, and we get up there, and has anyone ever been there? Well, they have, thank God, a barrier wall now. The woman who traveled with us said there's no, when she went a few years ago, there was no barrier wall. And I can't even imagine. I cannot imagine. Anyway, we get up there, and it's freezing, freezing cold, but it was well worth the hike and the visit and everything. And we got up there and came back, and there was snow and sleet and everything as we came back, and of course found another pub and bought some sweaters. That, you know, did the whole sort of trip there. And then the next day, this is pretty crazy, we got a Ring of Kerry tour, which I didn't even know what the Ring of Kerry was. I swear, I thought it was something from a movie. And this is, but it's a whole part of the coast that you drive around, and it was gorgeous. And the weather, I mean, again, it was freezing, but not terrible, you know, bouts of snow, but we had a driver that day. And so we get back, and again, drove through the snow, and I was the designated driver, driving on the wrong side of the street, have you? And I won't tell you why, but I was. And that was another interesting scenario, because I was really looking forward to not driving that week, but it is what it is. But we just had a phenomenal time, you know, touring around, and one of the most fascinating things we saw, and this was kind of a funny day, is Newgrange. Has anyone heard of Newgrange? It's it's an amazing place. It's 3,500 years BC. It was built in 3,500 BC. It's 1,000 years older than the pyramids, and it was a whole village that was surrounded by a river. And it was apparently a very prosperous village, and it's a big mound, and it's surrounded, there's crystals all around the base of the mound. I mean, as tall as this room, crystals all the way around. And there's a burial chamber in there where they used to have sacred ceremonies. And the amazing thing is, this is now 5,500 years old. You walk into this chamber, and the light on the solstice, December 21st each year, the way it comes in through the chamber entrance goes exactly to where they have the remains of the people in there. And it was so, when you think of the technology and what these people were able to do 5,500 years ago in the preciseness. And then, when you hear about the pyramids of Egypt, they say that the rocks are so perfectly laid, I mean these boulders, stones, that you can't even get a piece of paper in between them. And the technology that they used is still, I think, something we don't even understand. This gal said, there's a lot of theories on this, and that they brought the rocks down the river and carried them up the hill, and these boulders are as big as this back of this wall. I mean, it's amazing. But whatever it is, and I said, well, what about E.T.? She goes, that's a theory too. But whatever, the energy over there is so sacred and beautiful, and it was wonderful to be in that. And so, that was a lot of the good stuff. And of course, that day, on our way to New Grange, driving from where we were staying, we drove through some pretty bad weather. It was like sunny, blizzard, tornado, hurricane. It was that type of day. It was the weirdest thing. So we get, I had restless leg syndrome because it was a 3-hour drive, and I was like, I've got to get out of this car. And so we go into this rest area. And I said, well, this is nice. It was kind of Americanized. It had a Starbucks type place, and it had a little cafe. It was cute. And I'm standing in line. I had €20 euros in my hand, and I had my fanny pack here, and I'm looking up at the menu to get a cup of coffee, and there's a fella leaning into me, and a man and a woman about 30. And I looked at him, I said, if you want to go around me, go around. No reply. And then I'm still looking, and he pushed me in again, and I'm like, really, go around, I'm not ready. So long story short, I pay my bill, I get my change, open up my purse, and no wallet. And so all of my money, credit cards, driver's license, gone. And so that was an interesting, Candace, of course, got pictures of me with the policemen when they came, and I had to file a report. But apparently there are people they're not Irish people. The Irish people feel horrible when these things happen because they're such gentle, loving, honest people. But it was people from somewhere else that came in and apparently make a living doing this. And it was fascinating to think that they could actually unzip the exact zipper that had my wallet in it and then take off with it. But I didn't let that spoil my trip. We went from there to the Guinness factory and took so that immediately, and you would have thought that so we get to the Guinness factory, and getting there, driving through Dublin, it's another experience in itself. And it's serious hurricane force winds. And we're walking down this alley, and it's already dark, and the snow's beating us and the ice in the face. We get in there, it's an amazing place. If you've never been there, it's amazing. And the tour was a lot of fun, and of course at the end of the tour you can go up and you get a coupon for a Guinness. And it's this beautiful place that just circles the city, and you can see the entire city, and it's gorgeous. And so that was a wonderful day. So to say, after the challenges have you. But what happened, we drove home. It was about 2.5 hours to get back to our place. It was about 11 o'clock. Drove through a blizzard, stopped at a pub, and had dinner, because we were hungry. And then we get back, and we're like, what the heck happened here? It looked like a war zone driving into our town. There was a tornado that came through there. And we're staying in a place called Adair Manor, which is a castle that's over 1,000 years old. The ancient walls, the stone walls were just, knocked down. Trees as big as, hundreds of years old just on their side. And we dodged that too. So that was kind of a crazy thing as well. So we did, as I said, even though the weather all around us, and even on the Ring of Kerry tour, the very next day, the Ring of Kerry was underwater and having hurricanes. So if we waited a day, we couldn't have done that either. So we managed to time everything, even though it appeared that all this stuff was swirling around us and pickpocketing and weather and whatever. We managed to make truly the best of it. And so Candace and this other gal that was with us, Maggie, kept saying, well, you handled that so well. I would have been so upset if that would have happened. And for some reason, it didn't bother me. I don't know why. But I was practicing the ho'oponopono quite a bit, which is, for those of you that don't know, the forgiveness practice. Because immediately when this happened, I thought, okay, I can let this really ruin my trip and get upset, and I can be mad that they took all my money and my credit cards and my driver's license and inconvenience and blah, blah, blah. And immediately when I went there, I was like, nope, made that decision to forgive. And it's a choice. I realized that it was a choice at that moment. And not to say that it was like pat myself on the back or not. It was really, as A Course in Miracles says, the teacher of God is generous out of self-interest. So, it was really for my own self-interest. Do I want to let this ruin my trip, or do I want to be happy? And so I chose to be happy, forgive, and move on, and send prayers and healing to this couple. Well, again, the Ho'oponopono is a Hawaiian forgiveness practice, which really, where I go with everything in my life, even though it's down and ugly sometimes, it's like, well, what did I do to attract this? That self-responsibility thing. And I never really figured that out, and it's not even necessary to do that because, that's the ego mind that has to analyze and figure it out. But forgiveness was certainly the most important component. Well, the Ho'oponopono practice is one that says, I am responsible for the world I see, and everything that happens out here is but a reflection of my consciousness. So there was a reason for it. And once the girls, I think, saw that I wasn't crying and upset and this and that, and they were like, this Maggie was so positive, our little fairy, and she's like, oh, there must have been a reason that this happened. And she said, there could have been something up the road that could have hurt us or something, and so there was a reason that this happened, and we just laughed, and yep, that was it. So it was a lesson to me, another aha, that we can get ourselves all bent out of shape over stuff. Life happens, situations happen, and some are not pleasant. But we always can take that step back, make that decision for peace, or we can get into the judgment and be upset over it. So that was a good lesson for me, and made the trip much more enjoyable. And so I was reading through the Course this morning and last night, and anger, when we get upset and angry, anger comes strictly from judgment. And what we're here to do is to relinquish our judgment. And the beautiful thing about these Irish people is they're just sweet people. I mean, they're you see them and it's exactly what you would think. They're in the pub, the older salty looking fellas and the women too, and they sit there and they've got their pint of Guinness and they're just having a loving conversation. They're not drunk and blasted. They're just just simply having a nice time together. And it doesn't seem like they're caught up in a lot of competition and judgment and condemnation of self and each other. It's just they're comfortable in their skin. And that was really a wonderful thing to experience, the simplicity of their life. And how, I've shared over, many talks, that we spend so much energy and time looking outside of ourselves and trying to fix conditions and change conditions in our life to, goal setting and this and that, and, I want to accomplish this. And, is that really what we want? Or do we want peace? And not to say that those things can't go hand in hand with peace, because they certainly can. But again, it goes back to surrendering to God's perfect will for us. And if we're following the will of God, which is the will of our higher self, our true nature, then life is peaceful. It's easy and it's not a struggle. But if we're pushing that boulder up the hill, then chances are we're not listening to that still small voice of spirit within us. So again, it's always a decision and a choice that we must make. And it goes to the mantra when these things happen. Again, if we get angry, if we get upset, if we get afraid, it's because we've judged it. Everything in this universe, everything we experience is neutral. And we give it all the meaning that it has. So it's my judgment giving it the meaning that makes me angry, when if I could just step back and say, oh, that's interesting. And what is it here that I need to forgive? I mention often something very simple, a practice that Marianne Williamson suggests before the last thing before you go to sleep at night. Ask yourself, who have I not forgiven today? And go to bed with that conscience clean, and you'll sleep better. And you'll also not carry that into your sleep, and then the next day, wake up and be angry still. So forgiveness is always the answer. Well, Gary Renard, who many of you all were here to see a few months ago, he was fantastic. He was at the Coptic conference and then came here to speak. And his, of course, the course refers to something, whatever the question, forgiveness is always the answer. Well, his answer to that is whatever the question for Guinness is always the answer. So for Guinness is always the answer, and certainly that might be. I don't think I could have handled 4 Guinnesses. I don't know. I would have been. I'd still be there. But anyway, it just is a reminder that whatever it is, forgive, forgive, forgive. That's really our function and our purpose here in this world. Well, when we got back, I won't even tell you about the flight back, but it was tough. We were up 24 straight hours. Then, of course, we drove back from Charlotte late at night, the night before last. And what we said when we got home is there's no place like home. And that's so true. I never understood when my dad, we'd go on a family vacation and he'd be so happy to get home. He goes, oh, there's just no place like home. I love this. And we just had a beautiful vacation, Disneyland or whatever, and it's like, oh, it's so good to be home. But I get it more and more now. And because I think we've all created our little sanctuaries and our havens and our comfort places that, nurture us and keep us comfortable and peaceful. So it reminded me of, in The Wizard of Oz, the whole story of Dorothy. It's such a great spiritual metaphor. The Wizard of Oz and Dorothy's, falling asleep, dreaming of going to this land of Oz, and her journey, down the yellow brick road to meet the Oz, and little Toto with her, and Toto was like her higher self. She was always having a conversation with Toto, and it's just when you look at this, it's so interesting. But the very end of the story, and one of the most beautiful statements I think that I just remembered, and I don't want to say it wrong. It says, let me find it. Here we go. So you all probably remember this at the very end of, her trip to Oz, and she wanted to get back to Kansas. And so, all of this had been done, and the Oz character, couldn't get her back. And she's like, well, what now? And Dorothy said to Glinda the Good Witch, oh, will you help me? Can you help me? And Glinda the Good Witch says, you don't need to be helped any longer. You've always had the power to go back to Kansas. Dorothy says, I have? Then why didn't, and the Scarecrow said, well, why didn't you tell her before? Remember this? Why did you put her through all this? And the Good Witch says, because she wouldn't have believed me, she had to learn it for herself. And I think that that's such a great metaphor. We hear this. We want to see people not go through their struggles and their strife in life, but we all got to go through our life experience, our path, and do our best not to judge it while we're in it, because everything is leading us back to Kansas. It's leading us back home. And then, the final thing, tapping her heels together, there's no place like home, there's no place like home. And then waking up in her bed with, the characters all around her. I mean, and then she realized, guess what? She was in a dream. And that's the metaphor for I find that very interesting, because that is A Course in Miracles, in action right there. That movie is A Course in Miracles, meaning that this world that we think is our home is not our home. And we're looking, for the Oz, and we're looking for we've got the big bad witch and we've got the good witch. So we've got that choice of who to follow along the way. And always, it's all of these experiences are to take us home. And we can delay it, as A Course in Miracles says, delay is meaningless in eternity, but tragic in time. Meaning that we can delay it, but we're all getting there. We're all going to go there together. And to know that we take this journey alone, but the destination is exempting no one. When we do finally wake up and return home, it will be holding our brother's hand, and no one is exempt. And that means the pickpocketer on one, holding the pickpocket's hand in one hand, and the princess's hand in another. And it's all of us are in this together, and we're all playing our perfect roles to support and nurture each other in this journey, even though it doesn't feel like it or seem like it much of the time. But the good news is that we're all gonna get there, and all we have to do is to put our attention and focus on it. Our home is not out here. As I mentioned in the meditation, it's a journey within, not a journey outside. So the practical way we live and behave in this world is to seek first the kingdom of heaven within us and live from the guidance of the Spirit of God within us, which is who we are. And when we do that, then it's a much gentler journey. There's many, we have this Prosperity Plus program. Wonderful class. It's a great class. It's a powerful course, and it does put a lot of emphasis and intention on goal setting and things of that nature, which can be helpful and useful, and it's a good thing. But for me, my goal is to be still enough to listen to that voice. My goal is to live in love, surrender, and just follow the yellow brick road is really what it's all about. And so some people come in and they have great visions and goals that they want to accomplish, and that's good too. But it's really about us being still enough and knowing what God's will is for us. And if we do that, then we realize we only have one purpose and one function, and that's forgiveness. But we can bring that forgiveness into our work, into our daily lives. If you're a doctor, if you're a newspaper carrier, a nurse, it doesn't matter what you do, but what energy, what heart am I bringing into my day-to-day life? And one of my favorite quotes from A Course in Miracles is, when you meet anyone, remember, it is a holy encounter. As you see him, you will see yourself. As you treat him, you will treat yourself. As you think of him, you will think of yourself. Never forget this, for in him you will find yourself or lose yourself. Whenever two sons of God meet, they are given another chance at salvation. Do not leave anyone without giving salvation to him and receiving it for yourself. For I am always there with you in remembrance of you. And so that to me is just such a powerful statement. And, just going back to the pickpocketer, because I'm picking on him today, but from love. And to recognize that even though I don't understand it or even like it, that it was a holy encounter, and that everything is a holy encounter. And in this encounter, we're going to find ourselves or lose ourselves. So in closing, we learned, instead of saying cheers, that they make a toast that says slante. So slante, and love to everyone here today. Namaste. Now, did you get it? Yep. Now we got a little treat for you today, maybe. If this works as I expect it to. I was for those of you that are my friends on Facebook, I was taking pictures, and yes, it looked like I was doing a commercial for Guinness, but I took a lot of pictures, and I did a little slideshow yesterday, and thought it would be something I'd like to share with you. It'll take a few